to this week's assist brought to you by Free Super Tips. I'm Warren Ashurst, and once again, we're joined this week by Mark Langdon and Dan Childs to go through all of the Premier League and EFL games and tips that we've got for you for this weekend's matches. And we'll start off in a moment with the big match, which is Tottenham against Liverpool on Sunday afternoon. But before that, we have to touch upon what's been happening managerially over the last week, because the last time we were with you, both Russell Martin and Gary O'Neill had jobs, and since then they've lost their positions at Southampton and Wolves respectively. Mark, we'll start with you. Probably not too much of a surprise on both counts. What did you make of the decisions and the timing?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about the timing, didn't we, a few weeks ago in terms of EFL clubs sort of making the decision sort of before the January transfer window and ahead of, what is a really busy Christmas period, and you want to, there's a lot of points to be gained. So if you're going to make that decision and get maybe that managerial bounce, it's a good time to do it. I think from Gary O'Neill's point of view, I just feel like the fixtures at the start of the season really hurt him because they got off to a bad start, played a load of hard teams, and he was never really able to recover. Interested to see how Pereira goes. I think he's more experienced than Gary O'Neill if it is him that comes in, but doesn't appear to be like an astonishing appointment, sort of, one that might get a small bounce, but I'm not so sure. Russell Martin, I'm going to stick up for Russell Martin and say that I think he's been not harshly treated, because if you're bottom of the table with so few points, you're always likely to get the sack. But some of the kind of passion with which the Southampton fans were sort of abusing him caught me off guard, really. He did get them promoted last season. Like, they're in the relegation zone this time around. They're probably going to go down. I think had they played with a more boring manager, they probably would have got relegated as well. And I agreed with what he said. He pointed out that it's normally only kind of the attacking managers that get dug out when things go wrong. So if there's like a defensive coach, and Sean Dyche would be, he's not the example he used, but one that I'll use. If they lose 1-0 or something, nobody says anything. It's just the way it is. If Southampton lose 4-3, it's, why are you playing like that? And I do wonder whether there is this kind of, safety first kind of mentality that does allow you to get off with a bit of criticism, and it's much easier to criticise somebody that does think outside the box slightly and wants to be more progressive. So I'm not saying it's the wrong decision to replace him, but I didn't realise things had got so toxic down at St Mary's.
Well, it's funny you pointed that out, Mark, because a lot of people will say 5-0 down at home to Spurs, at half time clearly doesn't look good, but there were banners already there from the crowd asking for Russell Martin to go. I mean, Dan, what have you made of the Southampton and Wolves situation over the last couple of weeks?
I think with Southampton, it depends if you're taking a long-term or a short-term view. I think if you're in charge of Southampton, you think that there's a realistic chance of staying up, then this is what they're doing this to. They obviously feel that there's still plenty of points to play for, and that they might have a better chance, making a change now. I think the style of play and the ethos that Russell Martin has, you could argue that long term he would certainly be a good guy for them to take them forward. And I'd also argue that if they'd lost the playoff final, he'd probably still be in the job. I don't think there would have been a massive reaction if they'd have got beat by Leeds, and I think they would be right near the top. Probably in the top two positions in the Championship now, pushing for promotion, still playing that great football. Maybe one of them situations they might have been better off having another year of building under him and going up. Might have been in a better position. Who knows? But what would have happened? But sliding doors moment in a weird sort of way. But in terms of Wolves. I just think, again, they're rolling the dice. I agree with Mark about the timing that is happening with a lot of EFL clubs. It's a time to somebody to come in. A lot of fixtures, points to play for short term. Chance to look at the squad, see where you're at before the window opens, and see you need to bring in. So, and I do feel they've got a better chance than Southampton of getting out of the position that they're in. I agree, it's probably not a massive upgrade. The Corinthians, they didn't have a lot of money, did a good job there, fourth in the Brazil and quarterfinals of the Libertadores, but yeah, I still wouldn't be putting piles of money on them staying up.
No, it's an interesting one. Maybe two managers who have, I suppose, maybe fallen on their sword from getting too far too soon, maybe, and kind of maybe slightly, you could say, overachieving over the last year or so. But Southampton and Wolves have decided that now is the time to part company, and they'll hope they can turn things around and keep their place in the top flight. We'll turn our attentions then now, as promised, to the big match of the weekend. It's a 4:30 kickoff on Sunday. It is Tottenham against Liverpool. In terms of the prices, Spurs are 100 to 30, Liverpool 3 to 4, and the draw is around about 3 to 1. Mark, we'll start with you. Liverpool, first and foremost, still top of the league, dropped points against Fulham last week, maybe not playing as well as they were earlier in the season. How do you kind of assess where they are at the minute?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not playing quite as well, but they're top of the Premier League. They're coasting in the Champions League. They're in the semi-finals of the EFL Cup, aren't they? After they beat Southampton in midweek, so it's not a bad position to be in. And you've got players like Harvey Elliott, who I really liked watching before his injury, sort of coming back to fitness. Jota's back to fitness as well now. So it's not like they've had a great run of injuries. Alexander Arnold was out, wasn't he? For a while as well. So yeah, I think we've given Arne Slot enough credit already on the pod over this season. It's a remarkable job that he's doing. I do agree that they're maybe not playing quite to the levels that they were other parts of the season, but you could argue that was a point gained against Fulham last week. I mean, to be down for 10 men for such a long part of that game, and I said on the show a few weeks ago, I think Fulham are a very good side, underrated team. And so to come back and get a point, I think come the end, it might be that cliche, come the end of the season, that might be sort of 1 point gained rather than 2 points lost. They'll see this as a chance for revenge after what happened to them last season at Tottenham, getting reduced to 9 men, giving away that goal with like the last kick of the game, and of course having the goal wrongly chalked off for offside on VAR. So there'll definitely be fire in the bellies of this Liverpool squad, and it also plays into the hands that Spurs have got United on Thursday, so less preparation time as well as all the injuries that Spurs have got.
We'll talk more about Tottenham and focus on them in a moment, Dan, but just a quick word on Liverpool. And as Mark mentioned there, probably getting back some significant players at this crucial stage with so many fixtures might well be key for Arne Slot.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, Robertson will be suspended when he Canate, he's a big player for them as well. But the squad's generally looking healthier. They've coped with, when people have been out of the side. I mean, even when Conor Bradley was playing well and come out the side as well, that was another one that was a blow to them. But no, they just seem to handle everything that's thrown at them, and they almost seem to do enough in each fixture. When they get a tougher test, they seem to raise it. Some of the Champions League performances, they've really raised the bar with their performance. You're thinking of Real Madrid. In the Premier League, I know Man City were on a bad run, but again, they raised it and produced a big performance there. And some of the easier games, their performance dips, but they do just enough a lot of the times to win. I'm thinking of the Southampton away game where they were very ordinary and still came through with a victory. So they just seem to do just enough to win the games, and that's a sign of a good team. I don't see their level, dropping a great deal. I think a little bit in reverse to what we were talking about with Wolves and Gary O'Neill. They had an easier run of fixtures at the start. Maybe that helps them to gain that early momentum under the new manager. But they've certainly run with it and cope when the fixtures have got tougher. Sorry.
Mark, it's so hard to judge, as we've said all season, Spurs at the moment. One thing I wanted to ask you was about sort of formation and personnel at the minute, because the amount of times that I've heard pundits recently saying Spurs look a different team when James Maddison's playing and he's playing well, and yet he doesn't necessarily seem to get a huge long run in the side. Ange Postecoglou feels like chopping and changing might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think the key with Maddison and the bit that you mentioned there is when Maddison plays well. Because when Maddison plays well, as he did at Man City, as he did at Southampton, then he absolutely deserves to be in the starting 11. And Tottenham are a better team when Maddison, and I'll emphasise it again, is playing well. When Maddison's not playing well, absolute passenger in the team, very lightweight, loses possession, not strong enough on the ball. And given that Tottenham are weak at the moment at centre half, and that they throw so many players forward anyway. Like, if you've got somebody in that sort of really key central midfield position that's not pulling his weight, then the whole thing kind of falls apart. And that's why I think that, generally speaking, it's been safer to go with a Bissouma or Bentancur as a defensive midfielder, Sarr as that kind of energetic player, and then Kulusevski in the playmaker role, because he's just more reliable, he's more durable, more athletic. But then when Maddison just shows those little moments of class, I think Tottenham are a better team. If you think of Tottenham's best performances this season, a lot of them have come when Maddison's been at his best. It's just he's not at his best all the time. Well, nobody
Dan,
can be at their best all the time, I suppose.
Well, no, true, exactly. But I mean, Dan, you were, I would say, fair to say, you were a bit down on Ange Postecoglou last week, going into a game against Rangers in midweek and then Southampton. I don't think probably many of your thoughts might have changed following those two games, bearing in mind maybe Southampton's performance more than anything.
I mean, look. I mean, I'm a Spurs supporter. Let's have that right. So I just want the team to succeed. I just, with me, he's been in the club now for quite a reasonable period of time, and when I watch Spurs play or I'm looking forward to a game, I don't really know what I'm going to get from the team, and that's a worry for me. The balance, he's still. Mark talked about the Maddison situation. He's still not really got the right balance to get the best out of him. I think probably the Kulusevski change of position has had an effect on that. Kulusevski has done great in that attacking midfield role, and Maddison's maybe been the guy that's kind of been adversely affected by that. But when I watch Spurs play, compared to most other Premier League teams, they give so many bad goals away. Not just bad goals away, they give up big chances, very, very often. And I do feel that has to change at some point. Otherwise, they're not going to get the consistency of results that will keep him in a job and get the club moving forward.
Okay, that all said, Mark, where are you going in terms of your best bet for this one?
Over 3.5 goals. If you look at Tottenham sort of games, you mentioned that Southampton one, but the 4-3 with Chelsea, there's 4-0 with Man City, 4-1 Villa, 3-2 Brighton. Really, in terms of the bigger matches, the only one that failed to catch fire was the Arsenal match, and that had more to do with the way Arsenal sort of approached the match, really, rather than the way Spurs did. Spurs are missing players defensively. I expect Liverpool to take advantage of that, but when Tottenham are scoring 2, 3, 4 a game, it does make me nervous about sort of backing the team away from home at odds on to beat them. So that's why I'd prefer to take similar price to Liverpool, just back over 3.5 goals.
And you, Dan, where would you be going here?
I'm going to just go for Liverpool to win. I don't see Spurs scoring 3 or 4 goals against Liverpool. I think there's every chance they could concede 3 or more. I think the fixture list works against Spurs with the amount of injuries that they've got. This is their 7th game, I believe, in December. Liverpool, I think, had the benefit of that Everton game being postponed, and the fact they've probably got a bit of a stronger squad, less injuries as well. I just think we're getting to a stage now where that could take a toll. You're seeing with Spurs that it can be quite erratic. There can be one strong performance and another performance that's quite off it. And I think there's as Mark mentioned, the Man United game still to come. Short turnaround. We don't know, how many injuries or what tiredness is going to come out of that. So, I think the timing of the fixture suits Liverpool. Liverpool, the stronger, more reliable team. I'll be backing them to get the job done.
Okay, just a reminder, it's a 4:30 kickoff at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for Spurs against Liverpool on Sunday. Time now to look through the rest of the Premier League games, and we've got an early kickoff to look forward to on Saturday, and it promises to be an enthralling clash as well between Aston Villa and Manchester City. A 12:30 kickoff, Villa 23-10, the draw 11-4, City 21-20. Dan, again, we'll start with you with this one. Manchester City, we've said it again, time and time again. Surely it's just a matter of time before they turn things around with another tricky-looking trip to Villa Park this weekend.
Now, they've not looked right, have they, for a long time? And to be fair, Mark was mentioning at the time that the winning run that they were on just before they went into this really bad stretch. He was talking about the performances have been tailing off, and so you could actually say this dip has happened. It goes back to before, the poor run that they've actually been on. And I just think that price you mentioned there, 23-10 Villa at home, go for it. I think that's overpriced. Villa's injury list has been sort of clearing up. They've not had a midweek fixture this week, so free run going into the game. I think Unai Emery, when he's got time to prepare, is a very tactically astute coach. There should be energy in the legs, to go after City. And I just think, City, even when they're getting off to a good start, that slightly fortuitous goal against Manchester United where the cross deflected right onto Gvardiol's head, they still find a way to lose the game against the United team that had gone into the game, not in the greatest shape and form. So, Villa for me look overpriced.
Those 2 goals that City gave away in the derby, Mark, I mean, it is just not them, is it? As a rule, they just don't do that normally. And you've got to worry for them going to Villa, considering how Unai Emery is and in his tactical nous.
Yeah, I mean, you've almost got to just forget what City have done previously and then just judge them on what we've seen for most of this season. 1 win in 11. They've had 8 defeats in that time. They've lost 6 of their last 7 away games. The exception was a 2-2 draw at Crystal Palace. You need a leap of faith to take sort of just above evens to win at Villa Park. Villa are not in great shape themselves at the moment, but they did beat City last season, and I agree with Dan. I think they're overpriced.
Okay, well, that is the early kickoff on Saturday. We've then got 3 o'clock games to look forward to, and we'll start off with a game between Brentford and Nottingham Forest. Brentford 5-4 to gain another victory at the G-Tech Community Stadium. It's 13-5 the draw, and Forest are 2-1. I think this is a tough one to call, Mark. Where are you looking here?
Yeah, I agree. I've gone for a draw on the basis that I think Brentford are at their best when they can counter-attack, and I know that seems a bit weird given their home-away split, but I'll explain that in a moment. But I still think that they're a better team when they've got space to hit, and Nuno's Forest don't tend to give you that much space in behind, so might sort of cancel each other out. Just on the home-away split, I mean, if you have a look at Brentford's fixtures, they've only dropped 2 points at home. They've had a lot of more comfortable matches at home, and their away games have been all really difficult. And so I'm not saying it's sort of usual to be that so drastic in terms of home and away, but I think if you just look at each game individually, they've kind of almost done what's been expected of them in every game so far this season.
I mean, we mentioned last week, Dan, that Forest had gone through that sticky patch and had kind of impressed us the way they'd come out of it. Can they build on that with another success this weekend?
Absolutely. I'm going to go Forest draw no bet. This will be my most confident prediction of the Premier League weekend. I watched quite a bit of the Brentford. I had their game on against Newcastle last night, and Van den Berg got injured in the warm-up. Pinnock got injured after about 10 minutes. So 2 of the starting back 3 against Chelsea picked up injuries. Even though they made a lot of changes, they've still lost 2 important players. The whole performance at Newcastle, I know that we know they're not great away, but there was the usual sort of edge that you see to Brentford about them. And a cup quarter final, I thought it was quite a disappointing performance from them. I know they're strong at home. They've scored a lot of these early goals and they start fast. I mean, how much will they have in the legs after the cup game? And I feel that Forest, if there's any team that's likely to kind of block it up and just work their way into the game, not concede that early goal, it's kind of Forest away. And we talk about Brentford's home form. Forest have got the 3rd best away record in the Premier League, and did it again last week. We're not playing great, but then still came from behind against Villa and found a way to win, despite the setback of the goal being ruled out as well. They reacted really well, got the win. I just think they'll got every chance here. Take the draw out of the equation, but draw no bet Forest for me.
To Portman Road next for Ipswich against Newcastle. The hosts with a huge win, of course, at Wolves last week, a 15-4. The draw 11-4, and Newcastle 8-11. Dan, how much will Ipswich gain from that win at Wolves last week in terms of confidence, do you think?
A lot. Newly promoted teams, every win you get, it's a massive boost. And I don't think they've been playing that badly, Ipswich. You're going over the last 8 games. They've not lost any of them games by more than 1 goal, so they're competitive. And you could argue that some of those games, they've not won at home yet. Bournemouth at home, they were very close to winning, ended up losing. So there is an issue there at home until you get that first win. But that's why I'm going to go here, not for them to win. I'm going to say Ipswich will draw double chance. They've picked up quite a few decent draws at home, and I'm not convinced still by Newcastle away from home. I mean, they've got two away wins. they've had this season. That, quite fresh in the memory to me, that performance at Brentford when they lost 4-2 were poor defensively. The Palace performance away as well, they were poor. That wasn't too long ago. So I just odds on. I think Ipswich, even though I've not won at home, I do feel it's a tricky venue to go and win at. The crowd are on top of you. They're quite passionate, and I don't think they're that bad a side. So Ipswich will draw a double chance.
I know you've mentioned a couple of times, Mark, you've been quite impressed with bits and pieces you've seen of Ipswich. The last couple of weeks maybe edged you towards them potentially staying up, or do we still think that they're going to be struggling?
Well, I think they'll be struggling because you sort of looking, well, who are they, outside of the sort of promoted clubs, who are they going to sort of reel in? Maybe it's Wolves. Everton have not been amazing either, but that might be their undoing. I fancy them to be the top promoted club. Whether that's enough, to keep them up, we'll have to wait and see. I think they can build on their points tally here. I've got exactly the same bet as Dan. Ipswich or draw a double chance. And the one thing I'd just throw in there is that obviously Newcastle has already been mentioned, played on the Wednesday in the cup. It's a fairly big game for them to get into a semi-final, and I just wonder if that might take something out of the kind of team as well.
The other 3 o'clock game on Saturday sees West Ham against Brighton at the London Stadium. The Hammers are 19-10, Brighton are 13-10, and the draw 13-5. West Ham, I suppose to an extent, would have been relatively happy with a point at Bournemouth, considering Bournemouth's home form this season, Mark. But Brighton certainly wouldn't have been happy with their performance against Crystal Palace.
No, so West Ham would have taken a point before the game, but they scored, what was it, 86, 87 minutes, and you feel like you've done enough then to win the game. Brighton, I thought, were really poor actually for most of that game against Crystal Palace. Missed Danny Welbeck. I think his influence on the team, just the way that he holds the ball up, brings others into play. I heard him sort of being linked about with a return to the England squad. I mean, I'm not sure if England will kind of go back that far, but he's definitely been playing sort of well enough, I think, to be in that conversation, at least. I think he was a big absentee for them in that game against Palace. But in terms of this game, I'm struggling, really. I sort of feel like West Ham could start to build something now, but most of their data is not look pretty. Even against Bournemouth, conceded a lot of shots in that game. So I'm just going to go for both teams to score an over 2.5 goals. That's a bet that has landed in 10 of Brighton's last 12 matches. And we know that Brighton, home or away, will have a good go.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, as Mark says, Dan, because West Ham are not necessarily the most reliable of sides at the moment, and I tend to think that Brighton have played better at times away from home than they have at home this season.
They have, but I mean, the narrative of the season has been, very down on West Ham, isn't it? And very upbeat on Brighton. And then you look at the table, there's only 5 points between the sides. West Ham are at home. They've had some reasonable, results at home recently as well. And I just think that, Brighton are favourites for this game. We're home advantage for West Ham. They have picked up a couple of better results. I agree that the Bournemouth, I think they gave up 29 shots in that game against Bournemouth, so that would be a bit of a concern, but still a good point for them to go there against a team that's been playing well. And Brighton, when you lose a derby in that manner, it can sometimes take quite a bit of shaking off, even if you've got a free week to do so. So I think could be a bit of a hangover from that, and I'll be taking West Ham without being totally convinced. I'd say West Ham on the draw, no bet, odds against reasonable.
Okay, well, Saturday's late game at 5:30 is at Selhurst Park. It's Crystal Palace against Arsenal. Palace 9-2, the draw 3-1, and Arsenal 8-13. There'd be some critics of the Gunners, Dan, who say that there may be a couple of chinks in the armour over the last couple of weeks with points dropped. How do you see them at the moment?
Yeah, I still think that they're going to be top 3. I would say minimum. You got obviously Chelsea and Liverpool, the other main contenders. They've not been losing games. Have they had the draw at Fulham when they had quite a few players out? That was a reasonable draw. The Everton would have been more of a worry. There's a couple of strange substitutes there when he took Odegaard off in the second half, and they couldn't. When they're trying to find a way through. No, I think they might actually drop points here as well. They played Palace in the League Cup, and 3-2. Arsenal came from behind to win. I think the second goal by all accounts, would have been offside if there had been VAR involved. So not a completely convincing victory from them. And Palace have been they're probably going to take heart from that, and the fact that they're 5 games unbeaten in the Premier League and have been improving, under the radar a little bit, if you like, for quite a while. So got their decent result in a tough game at Villa not so long ago. This game there at home can be a tough team to play at Selhurst Park, so I'll back them to get a draw.
Okay, Mark, are we starting to see the real Crystal Palace now after a poor start to the season?
Yeah, I think so. Ismail Sarr has come in. He's not as good as Elise, but he at least kind of gives them attacking impetus that was missing. Eze'd been out injured as well, which was never going to help them. Decore's been out, Wharton's been out. That back three was sort of newly put together over the summer with 2 new players coming in alongside Gahey, with Anderson dropping out. So I think there were reasons as to why Palace were way off it in the early part of the season. I tend to agree with Dan that I think it might be a tight game. I'm going to approach it slightly differently though and go for under 2.5 goals. And I know when they played on Wednesday there were 5 goals, but there's a freedom I think to playing in the League Cup that isn't there in the Premier League. 6 of Arsenal's away, 8 away games have been under. And as I mentioned there, I think Palace's sort of back 3 or back 5, depending on whether they got the ball or not, is actually looking really solid now. So if Arsenal are to win, it might have to be another set piece. I did hear somebody joke that maybe they need to get an open play coach into the team to go with their set piece coach. But they do struggle to sort of break teams down, don't they? Arsenal away from home at times with the way that they play. So this might be a struggle. If they do win, I think it might be like a 1-0, something like that.
Be interesting to see whether Palace decide to start with Eddie Nketiah against his former club, of course, in that game on Saturday evening. 4 games overall on Sunday. We've already looked ahead to Tottenham against Liverpool, but there are 3 matches taking place at 2 o'clock. We'll start off at Goodison Park, where Everton take on title-chasing Chelsea. It's 4-1 Everton, 16-5 the draw, 8-13 Chelsea. We're speaking, of course, before Chelsea playing in the Conference League, but we keep saying this every single time, Mark. It's highly unlikely that any of the team that will probably be playing on Sunday will be playing on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, Chelsea, unlike most of their kind of big rivals, have only got 1 game a week, and they're already out of the League Cup as well, because it's a complete reserve side that plays in the Conference League, and the kind of calibre of opponent that they're playing isn't going to test them, even if some of the bigger guns were out there. I mean, this will be, I know, easy to say, but I think this might be a tricky test here for Chelsea, certainly trickier than what Shamrock are going to put up at Stamford Bridge. I'm actually looking at no goal scorers. It's 16-1. I just look at Everton, who've already had 4 0-0s already this season in 15 league games. They've got the lowest XG attacking-wise in the league, but only 4 teams are better than them defensively. So hard to see how Everton sort of run amok and start scoring goals. But if they can sit in, frustrate like they did to Arsenal last week, then this might be sort of a real slog for Chelsea. And at 16-1, I just thought it was a little fun bet really for a game where Chelsea might not have things all their own way.
Yeah, I mean, we just heard today, Dan, that the Freaking Group have completed their takeover of Everton as well. I wonder whether that might just give them that little extra lift ahead of Sunday's game.
Yeah, I mean, it's been much anticipated, but the fact that it's gone through will give the crowd an added boost. Mark was mentioning the no goal scorer bet, and it might help the fact that Everton's do seem to like an own goal when they score when they win games at home as well. So Everton could win the game 1-0 with an own goal, and you'd still be okay. But I'm going to go on very similar lines, not quite as bold. I'm going to go with a draw. I think 16-5, the draw price looks big to me. Chelsea got quite a nice run of fixtures coming up. I'm not sure they'll be that distraught if this ends up in a draw. I think this is quite a tough place to go at the moment. Goodison, crowd will be on top of them. They're not conceding any goals. They'll play very direct. Look to get things from corners and set pieces and things. And I just think that Everton are a tough team to beat now. Only 2 losses in their last 11 Premier League games, and coming off that that really good 0-0 at Arsenal. So draw for me.
Not sure the Evertonians would like the fact that they've taken points off Arsenal and Chelsea and helping Liverpool in the title race, but they'll be happy if they can pull themselves clear of the bottom end of the table. Fulham are up against Southampton in another of the 2 o'clock kickoffs on Sunday. Fulham are 21 to 50 to collect the 3 points. It's 6 to 1 Southampton and 15 to 4 for the draw. I saw Fulham against Liverpool last weekend, and I've said this before, Dan, but I'm impressed by a lot of the Fulham players, and as a team as well, the way that Marco Silva's got them going, you would expect, would you, them at home to beat managerless Southampton?
I would, yes. I mean, they're eighth at the moment, Fulham, and I think they've probably left quite a few points out there as well. So you're kind of wondering, where they can go in the quite exciting times for Fulham in the second half of the season. Southampton, I thought after the Spurs game that there needed to be something had to happen. I suppose not surprised that Martin went. We talked about the pluses and minuses of that, but I think that there's going to be a desire to tighten up. We've seen it already, even in the cup game where they only lost narrowly 2-1 to Liverpool, and I think Simon Rusk is taking charge of this game. The first thing that they're going to do is look to be more competitive, defensively and tighten up. That might be probably at the expense of them going forward, but I still think Fulham will have enough to get the job done. So the way I'm going, Fulham and under 3.5 goals at 6 to 4.
Do you expect Southampton to, if not shut up shop, Mark, here, certainly be a bit more tighter at the back?
Yeah, you saying that Rusk won't take the biscuit in terms of how he sort of throws people forward. Now, I've got a similar bet here to Dan. I'm going to play it slightly safer. Fulham and under 4.5 goals, which is 10 to 11. So you are getting a shorter price, but you've got an extra goal in your favour.
Well, we'll head off to the next game on the list, which is at the King Power Stadium. Leicester City against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And in terms of the prices, well, Leicester, not surprisingly, are the favourites at 6 to 4. Wolves 7 to 4, and the draw 12 to 5. How much of a reaction are we going to get from Wolves? We've seen it a few times, Mark, where maybe, I suppose Gary O'Neill's been a bit critical of some of the players over the last couple of weeks. And will they try and bounce back and try and prove him wrong now that he's lost his job?
Hard to say. I sit on the fence on that one. Some of the antics after the game in recent weeks just suggest to me that dressing room bit of a stinky place, really. Ain't Nouri gets himself sent off after the match. Cunha, sort of playground bully style, stealing somebody's glasses. And he's now been charged by the FA, so we don't know kind of his status at the moment, but would be surprised if he avoided a ban for that. So I think it's just not a great place to be at the moment, and the new manager's got work to do to just get everybody pulling in the same direction. I don't like Leicester at all, though. I have to say, I think there's a case to, and I know people laugh because Southampton are so far off at the bottom, but I think there's a case to be said that they're worst team in the league at that time. So I have no idea how they've got as many points as they have. Their stats are not good at all. Don't know what to make of this game. Gone for a draw.
Yeah, it is a difficult looking game on paper. Dan, what are you thinking here?
I'm not keen on Leicester, and I think they're not as a place, obviously, but no, I think they're going to struggle to stay up over the course of 38 games. But I do think this is a game that it's a really good time to play Wolves. I mean, we don't know in terms of whether the manager's going to be announced and and maybe say something in the dressing room before the game. But I think there's a limit to how much impact he can have. What we do know is that Ait Nouri's not going to make the game after he's quite an important player for Wolves as well. We don't know what's going to happen with Cunha. They're shipping goals at an alarming rate consistently, and Leicester with home advantage, that's where they've been more competitive. So I think at the price is 6 to 4 Leicester. I think that's worth taking.
Last but not least, we head to Old Trafford for Manchester United against Bournemouth. Another 2 p.m. kickoff. United 4 to 5. The draw 14 to 5, and it's 16 to 5 Bournemouth. I've heard a number of people, Dan, this week saying this could be a significant win for United in the derby, get them going under Ruben Amorim. We have also got to kind of temper that with the fact that they weren't particularly great for the majority of that game at the Etihad.
No, But when they fell behind, I'm not watching the game. I know they hadn't had lots of shots and attempts, but they were kind of well in the game for me, playing with an element of control. So the goal, as I mentioned, was quite fortuitous. I felt for Man City, and they've responded well and got, City have got the big lift, the situation they've been in. United have dealt with that, and they've come back and won the game. So we can be hypercritical of City, as we have been, quite a lot, but still to come from behind in the derby away is a good effort, and I do think it'll give them a nice little platform now, maybe to go on a little bit of a run. And I'm going to back them to win this game. The shade of odds on at home. Bournemouth have been playing some great football, but away from home they can be a little bit vulnerable, can see quite a few chances and goals. So as much as I like Bournemouth, I just think at the prices, United I think have won 4 of the last 5 home games, so I'll back them to win this one.
Corners have been a problem in terms of defending, Mark, for Manchester United, but you feel like Bournemouth are not necessarily going to be an Arsenal style in terms of set pieces.
They're not Arsenal style, but they're very clever at the set pieces. The one against Arsenal was really well worked that they scored from. Scored from one against Tottenham where the guy ran round to the back post unmarked as well. So they're not known for it, but I suspect that having had a free week, they'll definitely be prepared for it. I'm going to go for Bournemouth to win the game. What's it you said about around about 3-1? United have got a big game on Thursday in the League Cup. We're speaking before that. Quick turnaround, and Bournemouth are third on expected goal difference behind Liverpool and Arsenal in the Premier League this season. They're going really well, and Forest beat United recently at Old Trafford. I know Bournemouth played very differently to the way that Forest did, and that might not actually suit the doing a job away from home, but I just thought the 3-1, given the factor of United playing Thursday, was on the large side.
Okay, well that is the Premier League concluded. Up next is the EFL.
Do you want football free bets? All the best offers from your favourite bookmakers can be found in one place. Check out racingpost.com/free-bets to find out more. Racing Post, stay ahead of the field.
Okay, well, this week's EFL game in focus is a Monday night match, an 8 o'clock kickoff in League One between Crawley and Birmingham. Much has been said, Dan, about Birmingham, of course, with the high-profile takeover and the amount of money that they've spent. They're still, obviously, as you would expect, up and around the top of the table, but it's going to be an interesting battle for promotion in League One.
Yeah, I mean, Wickham are going great guns, aren't they? They're top of the league at the moment. Birmingham, just behind with a game in hand. I do think Huddersfield have come on quite strong as well recently. They're a big club at the level, but I think Birmingham, by the end of the season, it wouldn't surprise me if they won by double-figure points. They're performing well on all the metrics. If you look at even their points total at the moment is very very high, and if Wickham hadn't been doing what they're doing, they would have had been in a really comfortable position at the moment. So they're controlling games, top on possession, don't give many chances away. Not much not to like, as you'd expect for a club that's spent by far the biggest budget ever for a League One club.
Well, they are 2-5, not surprisingly, to win at Crawley. The home side are 13-2 and the draw's 7-2. In terms of Crawley, they've got their own battle, of course, at the bottom end of the table. Do you think they'll stay up, Dan?
I think they've got every chance, and I like they do things differently at Crawley as well. They've probably got the lowest budget in the division. I don't think I'd be wrong to say that, and lost a lot of their players despite getting promoted. A lot of their better players, despite going up last season through the playoffs. The manager as well got headhunted by MK Dons quite early in the season. Rob Elliott came in to replace him from Gateshead. He's carried on the good work, and they're the second biggest, highest possession-based team in the league. And given their budget and the amount of injuries they've had to important players, I mean, I'm thinking Dion Conroy, Josh Flint, Junior Katurna, Jay Williams. These are big players for Crawley. Been out for all of these players for the last couple of months, and they're still competitive and getting some decent results. This game in particular, though, you've got another blow for them. One of their back three, John McKenna, is suspended after picking up 5 yellow cards, and I just think that's going to be a bit of a straw that breaks the camel's back against, like I say, the best team, probably one of the best teams League One's ever seen. So Birmingham are short on the to win the game, but you can boost the price. I'm going to go Birmingham and over 2.5 goals at a shade of odds against. Crawley's games often deliver a lot of goals. They lost 4-3 to Peterborough last week.
Just a reminder, that game is an 8 o'clock kickoff on Monday night. Crawley against Birmingham in League One. Dan always brings us his 3 EFL selections, of course, for the weekend. And where we're looking this weekend, Dan?
I'm going to start off in League One. I'm going to go with Wigan just to win at home to Shrewsbury. Wigan are only a shade of odds on. I thought that was a big price. Sometimes a team just needs. They've been playing okay, Wigan, but losing some tight games and drawing a lot. But teams need a big win sometimes, a kickstart. And they went to Bolton last weekend, didn't just win 2-0. They played really well. As backed by I think 4,000 away fans. I just think that's going to kick them on now, and it's not a good time for Shrewsbury to go there. Gareth Ainsworth's gone in there. He got an initial amazing 3-2 win at home to Birmingham, but since then they've really dipped. Last 2 games, lost 4-1 away to Cambridge, lost 4-1 at home to Wickham last weekend. No disgrace in that, I suppose, but they're conceding a lot of goals. Wigan, I think, will have too much. Going to follow in another League One wager. Going to go with Lincoln at home to Reading. Both teams sort of pushing to get into those playoff places. Lincoln a shade of odds on. I think the timing of this fixture is good for Lincoln. Reading, the manager, Ruben Sellers, recently went to Hull. That was a bit of a blow to them. Their top scorer, Sam Smith, as well, is suspended for this game. They've not got the biggest squad. The financial issues there are well documented. And Lincoln, they've been on a sticky run, but got a 2-2 draw at Huddersfield last weekend where they played really well in that game. I think they'll kick on from that and get the home win here. Last one, going to drop into League Two. Salford pushing to try and get closer to the playoffs away to Accrington. Just going to go for Salford to win this game. They're a team on the up, 14 points from their last 8 games. Great 3-0 win at home to Notts County last weekend. I think they're a team that will end up in the top 7 the way they're going. And Accrington have had a bit of a sticky run recently. 4 from bottom, no winning 5. So Salford to win that one.
Okay, so just a reminder of Dan's EFL selections for the weekend. Wigan and Lincoln in League One and Salford in League Two. Up next, it's Mark's turn, and we'll start off with a bet builder. So, Mark, the bet builder this week, and it's from the big game at the King Power Stadium.
It is, yeah. Leicester against Wolves. I'm going to start with both teams to score. Wolves very poor defensively. Don't seem to have recovered from selling Kilman in the summer and just didn't invest enough there. But Leicester, Hermeinson, the goalkeeper, went off injured against Newcastle. Been very important for Leicester already this season. Danny Ward came on, and sort of first thing he had to do was pick the ball out of the net against Newcastle. Remains to be seen the status of the goalkeeping situation, but even if he is fit, Leicester, just give up too many opportunities, I think, to be confident of a clean sheet, and that's why I'm going for Larsson to have a shot on target. He's had 5 shots on target in his last 3 games, the Wolves forward, but then you look at Leicester and the amount of shots they concede. Last 3 games, 27, 16 and 31 shots. A real sort of defensive mess from them, something Van Nistelrooy desperately needs to sort out. And something else he might need to rectify is sort of discipline within the team. Samare missed that game against Newcastle through suspension. He's back in. I just think he'll be carded again. He's been booked in his last 5 home matches. So both teams to score, Leicester v Wolves. Larsson to have a shot on target, Samare to be carded.
Okay, well, that's Mark's bet builder for this week. He always likes to give us a prop shop selection as well. Just the one this week, Mark, what we're looking at?
Yeah, I might not be allowed in at White Hart Lane if I'm going to be sort of talking up Matty Cash. He absolutely hated down at the Spurs Stadium. But I don't know if you've noticed in recent weeks, he's been playing right midfield rather than right back. So just looking at him to have a shot on target, he's had a shot on target in each of his last 3 starts. So there's already kind of signs that he's making an impact by playing higher up, and I'm not sure that's fully reflected in the prices. He's 7-2 for a shot on target, and City are giving up more opportunities than they kind of ever have really in the last 5 years.
Okay, well, that's Mark's selections then for the bet builder and the prop shop. We're going to turn our attentions now to the assist treble this week. Dan, we'll start with your selection first.
Yeah, going to go with Lincoln to win at home to Reading. I like the look of Lincoln's performance away to Huddersfield, who have been in great form last weekend. And Reading was a bit alarming for them. They lost the manager and they lost 3-0 at home to Blackpool last weekend. So I just think there might be a team to oppose at the moment without their centre forward, Sam Smith.
Okay, Lincoln for Dan. Who are you looking at, Mark?
Going to the Bundesliga, Stuttgart around about 8 to 15, won 4 in a row. They're fourth in sort of XG goal difference as well. So the fact that they're fourth in the Bundesliga shows that they're in sort of rightful position. They've won those 4 games by a sort of dominant margin, 26 shots on target for them, only 8 against, and opponents St. Pauli down near the bottom of the table. That's on merit, on all the metrics as well. They're sort of a struggling side. So hopefully Stuttgart can sort of go into the winter break in Germany with a home win.
Okay, and like Dan, I'm going to go into League One, and I'm picking Blackpool to beat Stevenage at Bloomfield Road around about 23 to 20. Steve Bruce looks to have turned things around now at Blackpool. They've won their last 3 in the league, and unbelievably, after that poor run, they're now just 5 points outside the playoffs. Stevenage are just 1 point behind Steve Bruce's men, but they've only got 1 away league win in 15. And would you believe they've not played a League One away game since October the 26th due to a couple of postponements and cup games along the way as well. So Blackpool for me, 23 to 20 on Saturday. So the assist treble this week, Lincoln, Stuttgart and Blackpool. And we'll conclude this week's show with the naps from Dan and Mark. Mark, we'll start with your nap first.
Yeah, going to Craven Cottage, Fulham to beat Southampton under 4.5 goals at 10 to 11. Fulham have only got 1 win in 5, but that really doesn't tell the full story. During that period, they've been away at Tottenham, they've been away at Liverpool, they've hosted Arsenal and Brighton as well. So, I'm really not looking at the fact that they've maybe not been picking up the victories. They're playing really well. This is a significant drop down in grade, and in terms of these kind of under 4.5 goals approach, this is just the belief that now Russell Martin's gone, Southampton will look to be in a more safety first attitude. So Fulham to win, but maybe not by the kind of crazy scoreline that we saw Southampton get beaten by last week.
And Dan, who's your nap this week?
Yeah, League Two, Salford to win away to Accrington. Slow start to the season for Salford, but they're really starting to get going now, and I think they'll have too much for Accrington, who are possibly facing a battle for survival.
Okay, well, my thanks once again to Dan and Mark. All that remains for me to say is have a very Merry Christmas. We'll be back after the busy Christmas period and plenty of football, of course, to look forward to. So enjoy that football and please remember to gamble responsibly.